looking at the first difference, we're going to be looking at services. When you're an employee, you get hired to do one service. You have a role in the position. You can typically take on more roles within the company if you move up, depending on your role. But typically, you're hired for marketing, or typically you're hired for HR. As an entrepreneur, it kind of changes. Okay, as an entrepreneur, it kind of changes. You get to decide what service you want to do. You get to decide who you do it for. And you're not tied to one specific company that you work for, you work with, right? Because all of your services are done to your client. All right, so that's the first difference. As an entrepreneur, you can do as many services as you want. You can launch as many products as you want. There's really no overhead. There's no oversight on what you can do. You're your own boss. As an employee, you can only do the service that you got hired for, and that's part of your contract, your hiring contract. All right, looking at the second difference, it comes within income. How do you make income, right? As an employee, you work for a salary. All right, you get paid every single week. You get paid maybe every single month. But as an entrepreneur, it's not like that, right? You're going to have to send invoices. An invoice is just a document that says these are all the services that I did, and you owe me this amount of money for the services that I did. Now, in terms of if you were to look at it as a graph, because I've been an employee before I became an entrepreneur, so I can kind of talk about this on my personal experience. But as an employee, I would get paid around $2,000 every month, right? It was $2,000. It didn't really matter how much money the company made. What mattered was that I was getting paid that amount of money every single month, and it was great for some time. But the problem with an employee is that you're never going to have a $1,000 increase. Never, ever. As an entrepreneur, as I'm learning, sometimes, let's say, this is hypothetical, but as an entrepreneur, let's say 1 month you're going to make 100,000. The other month you're going to make $10. The next month you might make 10,000. Then the other month you can make $5. Right? So it's really, so as an employee, the graph looks very consistent like this. Maybe you get a raise, maybe it starts getting a little bit higher, and then it becomes consistent again. As an entrepreneur, your income is going to look more like this, or more like a sine graph, right? A cosine graph. It's going to be up, down, up, down, up, down. And I think those are two big things. With that comes uncertainty. With that comes, when is my next check gonna come as an entrepreneur? Because all the income you make is really dependent on who you are, on the skills that you have, your ability to sell, your ability to market. As an employee, you don't have to think about that. As an employee, you do market yourself, but that's when you get hired, right? Like you have to show why you should get hired as opposed to this other person. But as an entrepreneur, you're constantly selling your services. All right. Now let's move on to the onboarding process where you're an employee. When I got hired, they asked for my social security number. They asked me to fill out an I-9, and that's just employment eligibility verification. You have to fill that out. You must have work authorization to work as an employee. You must have a social security number that's going to help you get hired. However, as an entrepreneur, some of the documents change when you're getting onboarded, right? As an entrepreneur, you're going to need to have a tax ID number, right? So you could use an SSN if you have an SSN. You could use an ITIN number, or you could use an EIN number, which is the one I always recommend our community to use. And then your clients might also send you a W-9 form. And this W-9 form, they're going to send it to you if they're paying you more than $600 in a contract. And this W-9 form is just going to give me, like, let's say I'm hiring you. By giving you the W-9, you're going to be giving me your tax ID number. So then at the end of the year, I can send you a 1099 miscellaneous form, and you can use that for your taxes. Again, it's just a document so you can use for your taxes to see how much you got paid for the services that I did for my company. And the other document that you might need as an entrepreneur is a contract. All right. This is actually dependent on the type of business that you do. But right now, when I work with my clients, I had to put together an independent contractor agreement that talks about the payment, that talks about who owns the rights of the work being done, that talks about the payment method, that talks about all the different tasks that I have to do, that talks about how can I contact, how can we resolve different things. And you want to make sure that you put that in writing. So again, the onboarding process is a little different. When you're an employee, Social Security, I-9, you have to be authorized to work. As an entrepreneur, you may not need to be authorized to work, but you should have a tax ID number. You should have a independent contractor agreement, right? If you want a video on that, give me a thumbs up in this video. But those are the two differences when it comes to the onboarding process when you work with clients. Work schedule: as an employee, you're gonna work 9 to 5, maybe 8 to 4, 8 to 6, depending on your job, depending on your shift. But normally you have a shift, an 8-hour shift if it's a full-time job. As an entrepreneur, I like to say that you're always thinking about your business, even though you may not be working on your business every single hour of the day. But personally, I work on my business a lot every single day, or at least I try to. Maybe I take one day off. But as an entrepreneur, you get to choose your schedule, right? So you don't have that autonomy. You do, as an entrepreneur, you don't have these rules that you have to follow. You can literally clock in. You can literally wake up at 8 a.m., start working, go to the gym. That's what I do. So I wake up, I go to the gym, I come back, I do some work, I take a break, I eat, and then I do some work again, and then I take a break, I watch a movie. That's my schedule, right? I'm always thinking about my business. Even when I go out though, I'm always thinking about when is the next client gonna come. I'm always thinking about how am I gonna market this. I'm always thinking about how can I solve XYZ problem within my company. As an employee, you just go in 9 to 5, you clock out at 5, you can forget about your work. And that's the beauty of it, right? So those are the two differences. Right, but it really depends, right? I'm talking about, from my experience, less than 100K in revenue, less than 100K ARR. That's my position. I'm sure that eventually that goes away as soon as I pass that threshold. But as an employee, you have a work schedule. All right, next one is in terms of work location. As an employee, you have to work at the location that your contract says. As an employee, you're gonna have to work at the location of your employer. Most of the time, there's an office. If it's virtual, then you work from certain hours. You have to join certain meetings. As an entrepreneur, you're gonna work anywhere you want. You see, when I did a program at Merced, when I went all the way to Merced, I was working from the hotel, still doing my work. I had another program to run, but I still did it in that hotel room, which was amazing. If I choose tomorrow to go to Texas, I can work from Texas. That's really the beauty of it. Sometimes I go to the library, sometimes I go to a coffee shop. But again, that's the beauty of being your own boss, being an entrepreneur. You get to work wherever you want. In terms of title and role, as an employee, again, you're hired to do a specific role. You're hired to do a specific position, right? So you're typically a marketing lead. You're typically marketing assistant. You're typically HR person, right? That's the main role within a company. As an entrepreneur, you're mainly the founder. You're mainly the CEO. Sometimes you're the marketer. Sometimes when you're starting out, you're the one doing all the sales. You're doing all the marketing, right? But as the biggest difference to distinguish is, if you're an employee, you have a role in the company. If you're an entrepreneur, you're the founder, you're the CEO, you're the manager of the business. When it comes to taxes, and this one again is really important. As an employee, again, they send you a W-2 form, and this is to show you how much they paid you every single year or for the time that you worked. In this W-2 form, when I looked at mine, I realized that they would take around 7% of taxes, right? That is for Social Security, Medicare, and the rest is handled by the employer, right? So about 7% of taxes are paid by me, and that's already taken out before I receive the W-2. As an entrepreneur, again, like I mentioned, the reason why you fill out a W-9 form is so that the person that is hiring you, or your client, sends you a 1099 NEC form, miscellaneous form, and in that form is going to tell you the amount of money that they paid you, and you are going to be responsible for around 15.3% of taxes paid by you. So you are paying way more taxes, like about 9% more than if you were an employee. So the biggest thing that I always recommend people as they're diving into entrepreneurship is to save, try to save 20% of that. The way that I do this now is in my bank account, I'm able to add reserves. So every time I get paid, money comes in through my bank. It goes to a reserve, and that reserve is specifically for taxes. I have a reserve specifically for taxes, and that's where I put 15-20%. I don't touch that money. I use that at the end of the year. When it comes time to do my taxes, I do work with an accountant, but just having that threshold of money there sitting ends up helping me. So for taxes, 15% as an entrepreneur, 7% as an employee. So with that, those are pretty much all the biggest differences. Really, the biggest thing you have to understand is that as an entrepreneur, you're shifting Okay, from an employee to an entrepreneur, you're shifting this mindset of security as an employee, security of your time, security of your payment, security, to this concept of thriving. How can I actually thrive? You see, like, entrepreneurs, you can start off making 2K, 3K, 4K, but it's much faster, at least from my experience, to get from 2K to 15K a month, because you have a lot of things that you can change. You can change the pricing, you can change your packages, you can change your clients, right? You can look for more expensive clients. At a job, it might take you a few years, but you can still get there, right? But that's just based on my experience. But again, it's about this concept of how do I actually end up thriving with my business and not just focus on the security. Because I think as an entrepreneur, you have to embrace this concept of abundance. You have to embrace this concept of there's enough for everybody, and by me taking this client, I'm not taking away from somebody else. All right. So with that being said, everyone, I really appreciate your time. I hope this was helpful a little bit. If it is helped you a little bit, share this with somebody that needs to see this. Give this video a thumbs up. Watching it on YouTube, give this video a rating. Give this podcast a rating. You're watching on Spotify or Apple Podcast. And remember, be motivated and stay motivated, baby. I'll talk to you soon.
Welcome to UndocuStartup by Juan Maya Hernandez.